I almost tweeted this take out, but I figured if you're good at something, you should never give it away for free on Twitter. So I harp on the IndyCar regulations and the next IndyCar regulations a lot because I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, long term issue that the series is going to face. If you don't have the regulations down and the regulations being something that benefits the entire sport, not just a few stakeholders, we're going to be in big trouble. But I think the biggest short term issue right now is very much the schedule and how the schedule is laid out and where the races are placed during the schedule. And I think that Fox and the fact that they've kind of taken over the promotional reins of the sport with the aggressive marketing that has been fantastic. We love to see what Fox has been doing for IndyCar racing. The commitment that they have for it has been second to none. It's been awesome to see. But I think one of the things that the Fox promotion has done has really exposed how poor the IndyCar schedule is structured. And the fact of the matter is, with two races on network television and the 21-day break between St. Pete and Thermal, IndyCar managed to lose half of its audience. They went from a rating that was almost universally praised at 1.4 million people down to a TV rating at the Thermal Club of only 700,000. Half of the audience gone between the first race and the second race. And, you can say what you want, but that's pretty hard to spin as a positive. Next week, the green flag flies at the Acura Grand Prix at Long Beach, and it will have been another 21 days since the last green flag at Thermal. And my worry is that the second biggest jewel in IndyCar's crown potentially will have a lower TV rating than even Thermal got as the momentum continues to kind of fall off, at least on television, with IndyCar. In an era of shortened attention spans, 13-year-old machines, and quite frankly, the television partner being the number one promotional tool for the sport, these 21-day breaks are pretty obviously hurting the sport. And I'll say it, I think they're unacceptable. At the end of the day, I think the Super Bowl commercials, just think back to February. It wasn't that long ago, but it certainly was long ago in terms of our attention spans these days, our TikTok brain. They all made us feel really good, didn't they? They made us feel like IndyCar was a huge, huge deal. But I wonder how much of that was us here in the industry, or those of us who are fans of IndyCar feeling like this is huge for the sport, this is going to be awesome. But the problem is the Super Bowl was 42 days before the second race of the season at Thermal Club. Joe Sixpack, who might have seen a Pato Award ad on the Super Bowl and said, that's really intriguing, has long since forgotten any interest that person might have had in IndyCar. It's just too much time to have seen something intriguing and then have to wait for it. It's just not working. And I think we've got a real chicken and the egg situation here with IndyCar right now, because IndyCar needs more races. I think the emphasis, the really, really hard emphasis, there was an article earlier this week written by Marshall Pruitt at Racer with Mark Miles pretty heavily standing on the fact that IndyCar is going to stand at 17 events through the year, through next year. I think it's just not enough races. And we hear every excuse in the book about it, and there were several in that article, from competition, from events that have nothing to do with racing. We're not even just talking about like competing against NASCAR or Formula One. We're talking about golf and basketball and the Easter Bunny. I don't get it. To fears over how the crowd's going to look on TV. And on that second point with the crowds, I have a real bone to pick. Now, you might have already seen the 10-minute interview that Graham Rahal did on the Speed Freaks here on YouTube. Got a lot of views. We talked about it on Unverified. And let me just preface all of this by saying I appreciate that Graham Rahal is one of the few drivers who's willing to kind of publicly come out and speak what's on his mind, right, wrong, or indifferent. I appreciate that. And the majority of what he said was pretty spot on. There were a couple of points of contention that I had. Obviously, I talked about one of those things on Unverified. That was the fact that Graham believes that the media should always spin things positively. And my response to that is ultimately we're not incentivized to. We're incentivized to tell the truth. And that's the relationship I know I have with my viewers. And I don't think my viewers would want me to just, put candy corn and rainbows out there all the time, because at the end of the day, I would be lying to them. And I can't be lying to them. I will be positive when there's grounds to be positive. This is not one of those times. The second thing that really bothered me and kind of prompted me to write this big Twitter thread that I didn't post because I knew a video would be a more effective way to deliver this message is the idea, and I understand that thermal is a little bit of a different scenario, right? The small crowd at thermal is very much, not totally, but largely members of the thermal club who, theoretically, and I say theoretically very strongly here, theoretically could spend money on IndyCar, whether that's a sponsorship, whether that's buying into a team, whether that's buying a team outright, whether that's starting their own team. Understood. But one of the biggest complaints that I saw about the thermal club from the fan base was that there was no crowd. And it's something that Graham brought up in the video, where he specifically mentioned how much he wants every race to have 100,000 people on it. And I understand there's a little bit of, that's hypothetical, that's facetious, that's just throwing a number out there. But he mentioned not filling up Milwaukee. He mentioned not really filling up Nashville. Those are two crowds that are, 5 to 6 hours apart in terms of drive time for a very strong Midwest fan base here in IndyCar racing. I think those crowds, considering the circumstances, considering the date challenges, the scheduling, the closeness of all of those ovals together, I'd say the crowds at those races were really, really strong, actually. But the real issue with all of this is what's more important to IndyCar racing right now? Because NBC promoted thermal last year, which I don't think was the worst idea in the world to promote it as. They promoted thermal as made for TV. And while it wasn't overtly stated for this year's thermal club race, in what way was that not made for TV? When you've got a crowd of 3,000 fans, as Racer Magazine reported a quote that Mark Miles quoted as that was how many people were at thermal. 3,000 fans. So let's remember back to some races of the past, even recent races. Texas Motor Speedway, for example, that probably had anywhere between 5 to 10,000 people for their last race. And everybody said what a bad crowd that was and how that was reason to not go back. Think about the Gateway races more recently that have not had the greatest crowds in the world. And everybody says that we shouldn't go there and we shouldn't go there because of the crowd looks bad. Or Iowa. Good Lord, I'm a little bit afraid of what Iowa's going to look like this year without the concerts. Everyone's going to complain about Iowa. Probably there's going to be many people who say that shouldn't be on the calendar anymore. But here's the thing. I think in today's era, where Fox is not only the biggest promotional partner for the series, you don't see anybody else running national TV ads about IndyCar. Nobody. It's Fox. Not even IndyCar themselves are doing that, right? Fox is doing it. Okay? Every race, doesn't matter if 2 people show up or 100,000 people show up, is made for TV. So I think you can not like small crowds. I don't think it actually matters as much as you think it does. Yes, it makes the event look better on TV. I understand that. But is it worse to wait 21 days between races because you're not confident about a crowd showing up to a race versus having everybody just forget about your series and then go to a track that isn't popular with your hardcore fan base. So you've allowed the casuals to flitter to the wind, and the hardcores aren't very excited because they've waited 21 days to go to a track that they all have a bunch of complaints about. Valid or not, they have complaints about it. The Super Bowl ads. Now, I think it's really important to note that Fox did not spend the $8 million or so to put on the IndyCar ads on their own network, right? They did give IndyCar $8 million of value for the 30-second ads that they showed. They showed 3 of those. That's a theoretical value of $24 million of spend from Fox. They could have sold those ads for $24 million. They didn't. They used it to promote IndyCar. Next year, there is no Super Bowl on Fox. And understandably, we know how TV providers work. You get the blitz on the first year, and then suddenly the spending goes away the second year. I hope that's not the case with Fox, with the big game they've been talking about, how much they want to promote the series, how much they want to rise up with the series, grow the series themselves. Let's say that there will be some advertising spend next year. I would hope that Fox would see the value of adding a couple of races at the beginning of the season. And adding races with the knowledge that, hey, look, it's not going to look that great on TV. You could, let's say, because everything we've heard about thermal is the sanctioning fee is $2 million. It probably takes another $1 million to $2 million. Let's say, let's give a really generous estimate that it would take $4 million to put on a race and not have to worry about ticket sales, much like thermal. So if this year Fox was willing to give up $24 million potentially of earning potential on the Super Bowl, what if they were willing to spend $8 on 2 extra races at the beginning of the season? Let's just say, for example, and I'm just throwing out an example, a Phoenix or a Homestead. Maybe both. Maybe Phoenix and Homestead at the beginning of the season. Maybe you start the season at Homestead, then you go to St. Pete, and then you start a West Coast swing at Phoenix. You go to Laguna Seca, then Thermal, then Long Beach, and you have Arlington somewhere in the middle of that. Whoa! All of a sudden, we've got a really packed schedule at the beginning of the year. You don't have the issue like you have this year, where you have one race in the month of April. That's crazy when you're trying to ramp up, build up to the Indianapolis 500, and you're also trying to ride the wave of momentum that Fox has provided for you. Who cares if 5,000 people show up at Phoenix? You would hope, maybe if Fox is footing the bill, maybe if someone else is footing the bill, that would be gravy. Maybe you could put banners all over the grandstands. If it's a track rental, throw Libbity Bibbity on there. Throw Honda, throw Chevy. Just put banners on the grandstand. Say, this race is made for TV. We're running on an oval before the Indianapolis 500. You guys know a Homestead would be an amazing race. It would be great on TV. What matters more to IndyCar at the end of the day? Again, with as important Fox is right now, is it ticket sales or is it a TV rating? You know what the answer is there. How many more people would have watched Thermal if Texas Motor Speedway had been a week or 2 weeks before Thermal? I bet you would have had a higher TV rating. And this is the thing about, and I'm not crapping on Thermal here. In fact, I thought Thermal, and I thought the Thermal race was good. And I think until you get to a 20-race schedule, there's no reason to kick any racetrack off of the schedule, whether it's Thermal, whether it's Iowa. This is not the time to be losing racetracks or losing events. This is the time to be gaining them. So for me, I think Thermal should stay as long as it's willing to pay a $2 million sanctioning fee. But this is the thing, I guess, in closing, about crowds and whether or not we should worry about what a crowd looks like on TV or whether we shouldn't worry about it. People crapped and crapped and crapped and crapped on Pocono, for example. And I know there's a whole different discussion about the safety at Pocono. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the crowd. Yes, of course, a crowd between 18 to 30,000 people is going to look like ass in a grandstand that's built for 100,000 people. But is it better to have another 500-mile race on the schedule, a race that's on the East Coast, and to have 18 to 30,000 people show up for a race on the East Coast rather than not have one at all? I don't know. At the end of the day, people are invested in this sport, watching this sport, buying tickets to this sport, buying merchandise, all of these things, because there are race cars running on the damn racetrack. It really is that simple. And this is an era where content is king. The more content you have, the better of a chance that you have that you're going to capture people's attention. And right now, especially early on in the season, IndyCar lacks content. And if you're going to insist on having a 6-month schedule, there should never be a month in that schedule with only one race. Hopefully that changes next year. I wait with bated breath. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below about any and all of the things that I have just ranted about. But I felt like I wanted to get this off my chest because, I don't know, I feel like sometimes we overthink this. IndyCar is where it is right now. Not every race is going to get 100,000 people to buy a ticket and physically show up. But you might be able to get 800, 900,000 people watching a race with nobody there on Fox. And that's probably more important to the growth and the momentum of the series than just ticket sales. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.